welcome to the Arctic Circle Trail webinar for 2026. This is just going to focus on a summer Arctic Circle Trail. The winter trail is pretty much not happening this year because we've had an extremely warm winter, and there's been very little snow, and it's still not entirely clear whether there's enough snow to actually ski or get a snowmobile across there. So when people email me to ask, what's the weather conditions going to be like, in this month or that month, to be honest, it used to be predictable, but for the last 3, 4, 5 years, it's become completely unpredictable. So this is my last winter here. I was hoping for a beautiful winter full of snow, and of course that is not what we got. So let's get started. Some of these slides, if you've watched a previous webinar, will look familiar, but just to get us going. So the ACT at a glance is you have 2 routes. You have the northern route, or the original route, and then you have the southern route. Depending on exactly where you start and finish and which route you take, it's somewhere between 160 and 200 kilometer long trail. And most people, if they're doing 160 kilometers, do it in about 8 days. So it's about 8 to 10 days, although some people do take 11, 12 and more. There are also extensions, which I'll get to a little bit later. And I think we have the most accurate count of hikers this year of any year. And I estimated that there's roughly 2,200 hikers last season, so last summer. The way I came up with that is that I hiked from Sisimiut to Kangerlussuaq along the original route, and I compared how many hikers I saw in that period to how many hikers said that they did that period in the 2 previous years, and then figured out a percentage. In both cases, it was around 3%. And given that I saw something like 65 people on the trail in early September, then the equivalent number of hikers is 2,200. I know that seems like a big jump from what we have been saying, but again, our numbers are very incomplete, and I think that this is probably the most accurate, ballpark number that we've got. Even saying that, 2,200 hikers sounds like a lot, but those who have done the trail before can attest that you still are in the middle of nowhere, often by yourself, unless you actively seek out other hikers, or unless you stay near the huts, because they are natural congregating places. So if you're thinking that it's going to be super crowded, like one of the more popular hikes in, for example, Iceland, like the Lagovega Trail or something like that, it's not. It's most definitely not. You do have a lot of peace and silence and solitude all for yourself, because it is extremely remote. And, those 2,200 hikers are spread over about 3.5 months on a 200-kilometer trail. So just a little bit about our management. So as most people know, I'm the trails manager, and I'm employed to look after not just this trail, but other hiking trails in our region, less than half of my time. So that has been the way it has been for the last 4 years, and that's why you've suddenly seen a lot of development of information and stuff around the ACT and other hikes in Kirkconnell municipality. As of this Friday, there is no trails manager. So I finish work this Friday, and at the moment there is no succession plan. I'll come back to this a little bit later, but just to let you know, the Facebook group will still be there. The website will still be there, of course. I'll make sure that this presentation is available on YouTube. And in theory, the ACT email address will be monitored, but basically there's not going to be anybody actively looking at the trail. Again, I'll come back to this a bit later. Just a reminder that we have no access to this trail by foot, except by foot, during the summer. So this is why we keep saying that we really need you guys to be responsible on the trail and to do the right thing on the trail, because we cannot get people out there to pick up things, to collect things, and access the route. We also have no budget still for trail maintenance, and that includes hiring people to help us do things like pick up trash and that kind of stuff. So just keep that in mind. If you're wondering why the trail is in the condition that it is, it's because of these two things. We do have a small budget for essential hut maintenance and garbage collection, but that only happens in the winter, and it is very small. We did get around 50,000 Danish kroner last year, which is about €6,500 or $7,500 in donations from 54 donors. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who did donate. But to give you an idea of how far that goes, well, half of it goes on one trip across the ACT on snowmobile to check the huts. So I am infinitely appreciative of everybody who donates to the Arctic Circle Trail, given our lack of funds. But just keep in mind that because it's Greenland and because of its remoteness, it's expensive to actually get out there and try to do stuff on this trail. Of course, the main thing that we have for the trail is the official Arctic Circle Trail website, and I hope that everybody has found this by now. So Visit Greenland took down their version of the ACT website, which I also wrote back in the day, because this is now the definitive source of information. So, I've been keeping this updated for the last 4 years. I hope it will continue to be updated by those in my office. But basically, this is your one-stop shop, the latest information you'll find about the Arctic Circle Trail on the web. So if you haven't found it, there's the web address. If you haven't read it thoroughly, and by thoroughly I really do mean thoroughly, please go and do so before making any decisions about the Arctic Circle Trail. And if you just go to the homepage, I've tried to make it quite easy by splitting it up into these sections. So, first thing you should do is assess whether the trail is right for you. Then, once you've sort of figured out that, yes, I had the right experience and all the rest of it, I want to do the trail, then the next section is to plan. And I've got links here that go deeper into the rest of the website for more information. And just work your way down the stages. That way you shouldn't miss things. There is more in the website, but you shouldn't miss the critical things. And hopefully that kind of, gives you all the information that you need. The other thing is there are a few other resources. So the Cicerone Guide, or Paddy Dillon's book as it's commonly known, that was last published in 2019, so it was quite out of date. But I have been working with Paddy at the end of last year to make sure that the information is updated, and they will be publishing a new version in 2026. So if you're planning on buying the book, I would suggest waiting or holding out until the 2026 version comes out, because, of course, the other one is quite out of date at this point. Some people are still using this old German guide, which is now more than 10 years old. I beg you, please update, either by the Cicerone Guide or use the website. There's also a recent book being published in the Czech language, and in 2024 there was one published in the Polish language. So if you speak either of those languages, you have a few other resources as well. But again, the definitive source of information, the most up-to-date information, comes from arcticcircletrail.gl. So I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about this. The trail is not for everyone. And this is really important. And this is what this self-assessment thing is about, right up there at stage 1. So in the assessment thing, I have this little quiz, which is, just a Google Forms, et cetera, et cetera. But the most important thing is that you have to be honest with yourself when you're answering the questions. It's not for assessment. If you find that, you're answering the quiz in such a way that it's sort of indicating that you're not ready for the Arctic Circle Trail, take that advice on board. Be honest with yourself in answering the questions. The Arctic Circle Trail is not going anywhere. I am, but the trail's not. So, don't push yourself if there's any doubt whatsoever that the trail is right for you. And I'll sort of go through a little bit what I mean by this. So we had 514 people took the quiz in 2025. And I'm going to show you some of the results. So we have a question, which is, do you know how to safely cross rivers in the backcountry? Because one of the things we're most concerned about is your safety. Like, I don't write all of these thousands of words and do these webinars for my own fun. I do it to try to keep you guys safe in this very remote Arctic environment. And there are some big rivers on the Arctic Circle Trail, especially in recent years with all of the rain we've been getting during the summer. So now, even in September, there are very, very large rivers on the Arctic Circle Trail. So do you know how to cross them? Of the people who answered the quiz, 20% said that they didn't. So there's some red flags there right now. And I admit that some of these people will have gone away and not decided to do the ACT, which is a great outcome. But just to give you an indication that people looking at the ACT, 20% of them don't know how to cross rivers safely. Again, with safety, it's all about navigation. So do you know how to navigate in the wilderness using a GPS and a compass with a topographic map? Now, I did say the maps are not brilliant, but you do need more than just your phone for navigation. Because what happens if you drop your phone in the river? If that's all you've got, then you are in trouble. Because yes, the original route of the ACT is reasonably well marked, but there are stretches where it's not. And there are stretches where the trail kind of disappears for various reasons. And so if you're only relying on your phone, what are you going to do then? So please make sure you have more than one way to navigate the ACT if you're going to do it. So here again, 20%, 21% said that they did not know how to navigate using both. The other thing is we want you to enjoy this. There's no point coming all the way to Greenland, doing this amazing trek, and then absolutely hating the experience. And so, I ask, have you previously completed a self-supported hike, so one where you're carrying all your own gear, lasting more than 4 days? Have you done it? Because if you haven't, this is going to be a big shock to the system. And here we can see about 15% of people had not had this experience. Because to be honest, most people start the trail carrying around 20 kilos. I mean, food weighs a lot, even if you're being, quite frugal with it. So you're starting with around 20 kilos. There are some who get it to less than that, but there are a lot that I see are at 25 kilos and even more. That's heavy. And so if you're not prepared, if you haven't trained, if you haven't carried a pack for 8 days with significant weight, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna find this trail very, very difficult, and you may end up with things like blisters and other discomforts as well. So do you have that prior experience? Again, not asking for me, asking for you, your safety and your enjoyment. Then with your enjoyment, are you mentally prepared to cope with challenges like insects? We saw them in the last picture, temperature swings and physical fatigue over an extended period. This trail looks fairly easy on paper, but it's actually not. And there's many, many people who can attest to that in the Facebook group. So are you prepared for that? And I'm using some statistics that I got from last year. So these are the numbers of self-rescues or self-evacuations. So there were 6 from Ekkoligani, so the halfway point of the trail. There was 4 at least from the first fjord just outside of Sisimiut, so at the end of the first day from Sisimiut, or the day before you get to Sisimiut. So these are people mostly who have gotten to a certain point, discovered the trail was much, much harder than they expected, and then fortunately arranged a transport to come and pick them up and take them to the end of the trail. So thanks for doing that and not calling for an emergency, because just because it's harder than you think is not actually an emergency. But this gives you an indication that at least 10 people kind of ditched the trail at some point along the way. So, that's partially mental preparation. Some of it could be through injury, but some of it is definitely mental preparation. Do you understand, follow, leave no trace principle? So, almost everybody said that they knew what they were, but, evidence would suggest that that's not accurate. So we still have, and this is true for trails around the world, we have a rather large toilet paper and trash problem on the Arctic Circle Trail. And I say this is true for trails around the world, but we cannot get out here to clean this up. And when we do get out here is in the winter, when all of this is covered by snow, and so we don't see it. And this is the reason why it's kind of a little bit of a mess out there at times. And it's through the incredible acts of other hikers who actually pick this stuff up, as part of them hiking the trail. And I'm infinitely grateful for that support. But you don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. I don't want to pick this up. You don't want to pick this up. And so, please, if you're going to do this trail, we have very, very limited facilities on it. So you have to be prepared to carry everything, including used toilet paper, out with you. Do not leave anything on the trail. And the other reason that this is so important is that there is a really high risk of all of this contaminating the water sources. So at the moment, the water sources along the ACT, all the locals drink without filtering. I'm not sure what percentage of hikers do it without filtering. I certainly do, but certainly all the locals do. And of course, there's the wildlife. And so as this gets worse, this issue, if we can't start to rein this in, we have run a really serious risk of all of our waterways being contaminated, because this is what does it. And then with that contamination, people get sick on the trail, which would be a disaster. Animals get sick, et cetera, et cetera. So please do not leave your toilet paper, and make sure you bury your actual human waste when you're out there. Another thing, again, it's all about our resources. One of the questions we ask is, do you own or have access to a two-way personal emergency communication device? We ask for two-way because if it's only one way where you just hit the button and hope for the best, that's almost as much work for our search and rescue team as if you basically, because they have to go out of their way to find you. They can't verify that you haven't moved. So when it's a one-way, hit the emergency beacon, they have to send the helicopter. If it's a two-way communication device, they can enter into a text chat with you, and they can find out exactly what the problem is, so exactly what resources they need, exactly where you are, the fact that you haven't moved. They can find out a lot more information, and then they can adjust exactly how they respond to that emergency much more clearly. So we do ask that you bring a two-way personal emergency communication device. And again, from last year's report, you can see the number of search and rescue events. Again, these are very incomplete numbers. There's no one source of information. I have to kind of try to cobble this together from various sources. And in 2025, you can see there were 9 that I know about. So that's 9 that are either got through through boat, like if someone was close to the fjord, or usually their helicopter. And for each one of these rescues, these full search and rescues, it can involve up to 18 people. And just remember, Sipiot has only 5,500 people, and Kangerlussuaq has 500, even less. So, sending 18 people out to rescue one person off a trail, it's a lot of resources for us. Plus, we have one helicopter, basically, for all of Greenland. And so unless you have a true emergency where you cannot move and you cannot get to safety, and you absolutely need that helicopter, you should be looking to self-rescue, not hit the SOS button. Because if we are rescuing someone off the Arctic Circle Trail and it's not really an emergency, it's kind of a bit touch and go, then the helicopter is tied up and we are not rescuing, for example, a fisherman in genuine emergency situations off the coast of Greenland. So just keep in mind that calling for the emergency helicopter is only for actual emergencies. And we have a lot more information about this on the website, which I encourage you to read. So that's kind of, going through the different types of questions that we ask in that survey or in that, I guess, self-assessment quiz. And so turning the table a little bit, so who does thrive on the ACT? Well, it's definitely people who want peace and quiet, because you get an awful lot of that. It's one of the really, really remarkable and amazing things about the ACT. And it's often the top, one of the top highlights of people when they give us feedback on the ACT. But people who thrive on the ACT, they also carry every gram they brought in with them out again. We say that you can dig a cat hole and bury your human waste, but all of your trash, all of your used toilet paper, every other thing that you take onto that trail, you should be bringing it, or you have to bring it out with you. And people who thrive on the ACT have a sense of responsibility for a landscape that no one is policing. So this is our backyard. The ACT is our backyard. It's the backyard of Sisimiut and Kaiflisuak. And, you wouldn't, what would you do in your own backyard? Would you leave trash? Would you leave used toilet paper lying around? No. So, this is our backyard. So help us keep it clean and help us keep it, safe and pristine by being responsible for it in a way that, doesn't require somebody looking over your shoulder. So I've pulled out some feedback from the last 2 years to sort of illustrate this point. So I've removed the person who sent it, but this is directly from either Facebook or the feedback that we get through the survey. And you can see here, toilet paper, and did I mention toilet paper? So much of it on the trail. Another one, we're very disappointed to have seen so much trash around a couple of the huts. And sadly this year, I also found used loo roll in several places, used tampons, wet wipes, recent defecation above ground with stones placed on top of it, people still leaving food behind them in the huts. Would you eat it if you found it? So these are the biggest problems we have on the trail, is with the trash and the toileting. So the reason I keep harping on about it is because it is disgusting, and we cannot get out there to deal with it. I mean, we shouldn't have to, but even if, even so, we can't get out there to deal with it. And, it's dangerous. It has real potential to contaminate the water sources. So pack it in, all of it, pack it out, all of it. So here's a scenario, and I'm just going to let you sit with this for a couple of seconds. Your boots are soaked. Trust me, they're probably going to be. It's raining. It probably is going to be. You're freezing because, the temperature just swings all over the place. You're behind schedule, although, hopefully not. Your waste bag smells because you're doing the right thing, and you're starting to carry and you're carrying some of your stuff out with you, and no one is around. So what will you do? I mean, we've seen in previous pictures that some people choose to do the wrong thing. If you're not prepared to carry everything out with you, then the Arctic Circle Trail is not the right trail for you. There are plenty of other trails in the world, and some of them, and most of them actually, are way better equipped and have way better facilities than what we do here. So if your instinct is to find a rock to hide things under, then, I would suggest perhaps looking at a different trail. So the other people who thrive on the ACT is that they make decisions, proper decisions, good decisions, even when they're tired, wet, and cold, and they accept that discomfort is normal, not unfair. Now, as I say, I know that the trail looks easy on paper, and if you are looking at pictures and it's blue skies and all the rest of it, yeah, that's nice and easy when it's blue skies and dry trail and all the rest of it. But that's not what we've been having for the last few years. So you must be prepared, as this person has said, to walk in wet boots. I know a lot of people for the last couple of years had just given up on day one and have just hiked the entire trail in wet boots. The other option is if you get some really good waterproof socks, like really high quality ones, then they will keep your feet dry. So when I hiked the Arctic Circle Trail last year, my boots were completely saturated on day 2, but my feet were dry the entire time because I had really good waterproof socks. The other option is to not wear boots, although the ankle support does help. It's just to wear trail runners with waterproof socks again, and just accept the fact that, you're just going to be wet. Here's another example from feedback, several water crossings and so many bogs. So this is very different to when I did the Arctic Circle Trail in 2018 for the first time. So as I said, I've done this trail twice in its entirety, the original route. The first time was 2018, which was nice and dry, and maybe 10% of the trail was super wet and boggy, and you had to dance around it a little bit. But this year, I would say that more than half of the trail, probably up to 70% of the trail, is quite boggy. So it's a very, very different experience than what it was in 2018. For me, the trail was, almost unrecognizable as the one that I originally hiked. So I keep talking about how wet it was. I've heard this for the last several years, ever since 2023, about how wet the trail is, but nothing quite prepared me for what is out there. So I'm just going to play a little bit of this video. It's available on YouTube. And this gives you an indication. Admittedly, this is one of the worst sections, but, it's still a thing. There's mud, there's water, there's bogs. You can see this guy has just given up and is just walking through it all with his boots. Now, he says this is what it's like for almost the whole trail. That's not actually true. But in this section, which I'm going to guess is actually the Merrimack Valley, it is quite bad. So if you're going to hike the Arctic Circle Trail, or really any trail in Greenland, I would say, any of these remote long distance ones, you should be prepared for very wet conditions. Another way of looking at this is with photographs. So Iris has been putting up before and after photographs because she's hiked this trail 9 or 10 times now. So you can see on the left, 2015, when it was nice and dry. And in 2023, it's definitely not dry. So you used to be able to rock hop across this little stream. And in 2023, that was definitely not possible. And I'll show you one from last year as well. But why am I sort of going on about this? So apart from the discomfort, and I talked about that earlier, it also makes navigation much more difficult. So in this particular photograph, you can see a cairn here and you can see the trail like heading up here. But there are many, many places on the Arctic Circle Trail where you don't see this, where you're entering this boggy area and you cannot see the trail on the other side of it for various reasons. And one of the things that has become, one of the key pieces of feedback over the last few years has been that navigation has become much more difficult because the trail disappears into the bog, or also where it overlaps with the Arctic Circle track, the ATV track, it also gets lost a bit in there. So again, this is why we stress so much that even if you're doing the northern route, which is it is marked, you really need to know how to navigate because you are going to lose the trail, at least on a few occasions. So this is that same crossing, but in September this year. So it's not just a beginning of the season thing anymore, like it used to be. This is the second week in September when I did it. You can see from the autumn colors. And the added bonus, if you do it in autumn, that late in autumn, is that there's a thin layer of ice. And so as you're walking through there with your underwear and bare legs, absolutely freezing cold, the ice is also cutting your legs as you're going. So things to look forward to. This is now actually one of the most talked about and potentially dangerous if you're not very careful sections of the Arctic Circle Trail if it's this wet. So this is just before, it's about 6 kilometers before you get to Katafik Hut if you're coming from Kangerlussuaq. Colloquially on the trail last year, it was known as the Croc Graveyard because people had changed into their river shoes to come through here, but because the bottom was all kind of boggy, the Crocs got stuck. I know of several people who fell in here and just became completely wet. So again, I can't predict what next year is going to be. My suspicion, or my guess, is that given how little snow we've had this winter, it's probably going to be at least this wet this coming summer. So be very, very careful at this section on the trail. It is one of the more dangerous sections now. And you can see in this graph, which was actually done for the Kangerlussuaq Science Workshop, the fact that the rain, so here is the year that we had the wildfires on the ACT, super dry year. This is the year that I did it. I did it in August, so in this blue month. And you can see just this huge, huge increase in rain since pretty much 2020. So this is why the trail is so wet now. And this is not just in our area, this is pretty much all over Greenland. So I said that even though this trail is very wet, if you're going to do other trails in Greenland, you should also be expecting conditions similar to this, because we have had a lot of rain in the last few years. All right, what else? So people who thrive on the ACT, I've talked about this again, they already have done unsupported, in other words, they're carrying everything, long distance hiking, and they either finish what they start or they turn back and they are not worried about their egos. It's okay to turn back if it's more than what you thought it would be. So, and you can sort of see here, many people turn back due to difficulties. It seems these stories should be shared as a caution. This is not an easy trail. Come prepared. Again, back in 2018, before it was super wet, if you had a lot of long distance hiking experience, it was actually a pretty easy trail. But even for a really strong hiker like myself now, it's a tough trail because it's so wet. So I showed you this before. These were the people who had called for a self-rescue or a self-evacuation off the trail. So, yes, you can do this. Make sure you have everything programmed into your device before you leave. You can find the numbers for the different tour providers that will come out and pick you up at various places. All of that is on the website. But make sure you have it programmed in before you start the trail, because of course there's no reception once you're out there. So then, moving into the second phase, so all that's like before you even begin. Then the next stage is, planning. And as I said, if you work your way through the homepage, going into these sections that I've sort of linked more deeply here, and you can see, familiarize yourself with the interactive trail map. This is something that a volunteer in Norway called Alex did for us, and it's really useful to get an overview of the trail, a really short description of each trail segment. You can see where the evacuation points are, et cetera, et cetera. You can see not to paddle the canoes past the canoe center to the west. Please don't do that because it damages them, and there are already at least 3 and maybe 4 that are out of commission because they've been paddled into that area. So please familiarize yourself with the interactive trail map. It's not used for navigation. You need to have the maps and your GPS type stuff to do that, but it's very good to get an overview, and then of course read thoroughly the website. So the Internet Bridge, we have a new bridge. It looks beautiful. However, unfortunately, there have been some issues with it. So this is when it was first installed over on the left, and you can see it looks lovely, doesn't it? Then here I am with 2 people who were helping me from the US National Park Service in September. And you can already see that the river has come up, and the bridge is, only just spanning the river. So you'll see in the video that it is still fairly stable, but what I would suggest is that, before you really go for it, just double check. We are in the process of trying to get it extended, repaired, to do something with it so it is much more stable, and we can guarantee that it will be there and all the rest of it. But just check it before you do anything this year, is what I would say. Of course, we're disappointed that this is how things have worked out, but I have left it with my boss and Arctic Circle Business to move this forward and try to fix the situation. It's probably going to be fine, but I just wanted to sort of put that warning out there. The thing is with the new bridge is that you should download the GPX route to it, because the trail to it is kind of marked as well as I could get it, but you will need the GPX route to the bridge if you're going to use the bridge. So please download that to your device before you start on the trail. You're not going to find it without it. Trust me on that one. Okay, so we're coming to the end. So I did say that there were some extension trails. You've probably heard of these by now. So there's the Ice Ridge Trail, which starts at the Russell Glacier and comes to Kangerlussuaq along the ridge above the road. It's a really, really beautiful hike, but it is challenging, and it's only marked for confidence. So again, you must know how to navigate to do that. Then it links up with the Kangerlussuaq Ridge Trail, so you can keep going if you want, or you can drop down into Kangerlussuaq and then go back up again. So the Kangerlussuaq Ridge Trail extends that all the way to the road near the port. So basically you avoid a lot of road walking is what this does. If you're starting at Kellyville, this is irrelevant, but if you were planning to start either from the ice cap or from Kangerlussuaq, this is an option. The Kangerlussuaq Ridge Trail also is only marked for confidence, so you must know how to navigate, and you must have the GPX routes for both of these, because you're not going to necessarily be able to see the next cairn or the next marking from where you're standing. And then on the Sisimiut end of the trail, there is an alternate. So the Arctic Circle Trail actually comes in here along the ATV tracker, basically. But there is this blue route around here, which is the Okumuyangbuk Trail, which will get you off this last section of the ATV track if you so wish, or save it for an extra hike at the end. So all of the information about these is linked from the Arctic Circle Trail page. You can also find it at hiking.gl, which is the website that has information about all of our other day hikes in the region on that. So that's another good resource for you. The southern route, unfortunately, is still not well marked, and unfortunately, most of the markers that we placed in 2024 are now broken. So wildlife tends to have a tendency to rub up against these things, and because they had to be light enough for us to carry, they have now been snapped off. The southern route is really only for people with a lot of backcountry experience and who are very, very strong navigators. It's not well marked at all. There is no tread to follow, unlike on the original trail. There's a lot more altitude, elevation, gain and loss, so it's actually more difficult physically. And because there's no tread, you sink with pretty much every step. And so again, it's much more physically challenging than in the original trail. The other thing about it is there are a couple of dangerous spots on it. So one of them is directly opposite, or just opposite Safangwit, just before you start heading up the kind of the chute on the way to Sisimiut. There is a very large washout area there. That is probably the most dangerous part of the southern route, and it is quite tricky to get through there. There are some other places that are extremely steep. So again, just be very, very careful and only attempt the southern route if you are absolutely 100% confident in your ability to navigate, because it is not well marked. The ATV track and Arctic Circle Road, well, the Arctic Circle Road doesn't exist. The ATV track does. The ATV track opened last August, late July. But really it's only still partly usable. It does go all the way, unfortunately, between Sisimiut and Kangerlussuaq, but realistically, it's only sections of it that are actually used. If you're going from Kangerlussuaq, please look out for the wooden signs at Kellyville that tell you, and also like as you sort of go down from Kellyville around the corner, if you're following the ATV track, you'll end up at two very big lakes. The trail goes off to the left. The track goes straight, basically between the lakes. The trail goes off to the left, so make sure you're looking out for that. You should be able to see a cairn, and there is a wooden sign there with the Arctic Circle Trail logo painted on it, so keep an eye out for them. The track itself kind of comes and goes between the first fjord and Ekkalliganiafik. Well, even between Sisimiut and Ekkalliganiafik. It doesn't overlap completely, so it's not like you're just walking along this thing, but actually where you can walk on it, or where it does overlap, it's actually often better to walk on the ATV track than the ACT, especially for river crossings. It's muddy. And this is another place where a lot of people are saying it's become quite difficult navigationally, is when it crosses the ACT, it can cause issues with navigation, because depending on how wet it is in that area, some of that area might have been churned up by the ATVs, unfortunately. So, but it's not like you're just walking along this thing for tens of kilometers and that's the end of it. The other thing is that you are very unlikely to encounter any ATVs along most of it. So the only places really that you're likely to encounter an ATV are between Sisimiut and the first fjord. And that is actually kind of a more built up road. So that's actually not that's not very muddy. So between Sisimiut and the first fjord, and then the very, very last stretch from where I said that turnoff was into Kangerlussuaq. Realistically, they're probably the only places you're going to encounter an ATV. And when I hiked the ACT in September, it was the second week in September. It was literally a month after the ATV track opened. I saw 8 ATVs on the first day between Sisimiut and the first fjord, and that was on a Saturday. So it's not like you're on a road. It's not like there's going to be ATVs going past every 5 minutes. It's really not a big deal, apart from the fact that it has, it's kind of made a little bit of a mess in some areas in the backcountry. We've also had quite a few questions about biking the ACT or the ATV track in recent years. So biking the ACT is not possible. Biking the ATV track, you can do it usually, although it does depend on river height. There are some big rivers on the ATV track as well, but it is very tough. You end up pushing for significant stretches of it. So it is not possible to bike the ACT. The ATV track is generally bikeable, but you're going to be working for it. And depending on the rivers, some of them may not be crossable. It's all a little bit up in the air. I'm almost finished talking at you. So this one, before and after your hike, please help support the local communities. And by doing that, choose the direct flight to Kangerlussuaq. As everyone has probably realized by now, they moved the international airport from Kangerlussuaq to Nuuk, which has caused problems. Last year we had 2 direct flights a week to Kangerlussuaq from Copenhagen. This year we have 1. And that flight is really a lifeline for those of us who don't live in Nuuk. And so if people will support it, it will continue. But if people don't support it, it will not continue. And that's going to have a broader impact on those of us who live particularly in this region, Kangerlussuaq and Sisimiut, but also regions north of here as well. Because Kangerlussuaq, you can almost always fly into Nuuk. As we saw last year, that's not necessarily the case. And then the other thing is, please stay several days in Kangerlussuaq and or Sisimiut on either end of your hike. One of the reasons why I've had a hard time trying to, I guess, sell the Arctic Circle Trail back to the municipality is this perception that the hikers don't spend any money. They're out in the backcountry for 8 days. They don't spend any money in town, so why should we be supporting this thing? Well, that is not actually strictly true. Most people do spend money in the towns at the end of the hikes. Anything we can do to show that thinking is incorrect is very welcome. So there's plenty to do in Kangerlussuaq. There's lots to do in Sisimiut. Destinationarcticcircle.com is the website that kind of shows you everything to do there. I know that a lot of people just want to head up to Ilulissat or down to Nuuk, and that's great, but that's not actually helping our region or our community or this trail. And so if you can, and I know that everyone's circumstances are different, but if you can, I really strongly encourage you to try to spend at least a few days in our region to help support the communities. Last slide. So the future of the ACT, as I said, Friday is my last day. I am no longer the trails manager as of Friday. Currently, there is nobody employed to replace me. I had hoped there would be, but that's not in place yet. So Destination Arctic Circle / Arctic Circle Business, so my organization and the municipality here are discussing how to manage the ACT going forward. I have given them a lot of information. The ACT report is very comprehensive this year, and I hope that they will take that on board and find a way forward where the ACT has proper funding, and we can actually do some proper work on the trail to improve it, and that it's managed properly, it's properly maintained and that kind of thing. But unfortunately, this is now out of my hands, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Then you're probably saying, what about the Facebook group, the donations, the feedback, the photo comp, the updates, work on the trip? Yeah, I don't know, guys. TBD. The Facebook group will continue for sure. There's loads of people in there that have hiked the trail one and most of them many times. And so they will definitely be in there, still helping those who are new to the trail. My hope is that my organization will appoint somebody to be the administrator of that. Again, I'm talking to my boss on Thursday about exactly what's going to happen. So that's I don't know what's happening with any of this at this point. But keep an eye out in the Facebook group, keep an eye out on the website. That's really all I can suggest at this point.